Alright, welcome to downtown. I've come down here to talk about something that I don't think gets enough attention in the internet space or really in general, and that is auditory overload for people who can't see. Essentially, the concept is this. What I'm going to do in just a moment is I'm going to remove all the background noise here, and I'm going to play a song. And what I want you to do is pay attention only to the first song that you're hearing. It's going to have some acoustic guitar in it. I want you to just pay attention to that, no matter what I add in the background. Okay, so that was maybe easy to start with, but as I started layering in other effects behind it, it probably got kind of hard to focus on the sound I asked you to focus on, right? And that's a concept that happens almost constantly, especially in my working environment, which is working with kids in a classroom. So if I'm supposed to be paying attention to one kid who's talking to me or who needs something, and I'm hearing 24 others being excitable or really struggling, it gets really hard to pay attention to the important aspects of a human voice, such as tone of voice or inflection, or even hearing a kid who's quieter asking for help. And so the goal for me of getting earplugs was to try to mitigate that a little bit. And what I'm hoping to do here, I am in a plaza downtown where we have lots of noise, and I'm going to test out each of the different types of earplugs in this environment, where right now, if I were to narrate what I can hear, there is a street in front of me that goes perpendicular to me, so from my left to my right, or vice versa. And it's a two-lane road. You get occasional cars coming to and from there. Behind me, there is a fountain, and that's got water cascading down a statue into a reflection pool. And there are several people running around doing people things because it's a plaza. And then about a block behind me and a block to my left and a block to my right, so essentially on all sides of this plaza, are fairly well-trafficked roads where you occasionally get a lot of traffic noise and that sort of thing. So we're going to start with the earplugs that I showed in my Why I'm Getting Earplugs video, and they are the foam earplugs that you get from places like Walmart. They're a couple bucks a piece for a pack of like 50 of them. I'm not going to do this very well justice-wise, but these are orange, and when I put them in my ears, the thing that's going to change for me is these are really, really good at blocking out noise. I've talked about it before, but I will kind of narrate what I can and can't hear as compared to what you're hearing right now. So we'll see you in just a moment. Now, this is a little bit scary to me because I can hear very little. It sounds like I am underwater. I can hear the occlusion effect, which is basically the effect of hearing your own voice in your head very severely. And as you can see, I have these in both ears, and directionally I can hear almost nothing. So I would never use these in an environment where I needed to be paying attention to the sounds around me and proximity. So as far as working with kids, these are 100% a no-go because I can't hear almost anything at all. I've talked about it in another video. These are useful for things like going to fireworks shows or something where I know I'm going to be stationary and listening to something that's too loud and then taking them out in a few minutes, hopefully, and moving on. So these fantastic for really loud things like fireworks, maybe going to a race or something like that. Not really good for much else. Let's move on to our second set of earplugs. The first upgrade before we even talk about our second set is from here on out, I will be operating off of my giant teacher lanyard, which is full of keys. And the nice thing about both of these next two sets is that they are clipped to my lanyard, and so I can keep them on me. They're easier to keep track of, whereas the foam earplugs I'm literally sticking in my pocket and hoping I don't lose them, which if I do, I have several more pairs, so no big deal. Not so for these next two pairs because they are rather expensive. First, we're going to take a look at the Vibes high fidelity earplugs. I will throw some footage of the unboxing and that process. These guys are kind of the next step up in terms of being able to hear the background. I have tested these for about 4 days at work, and I'll talk more about the testing and how that felt when I get them in my ears. Unfortunately, I can't do all of these things with one hand while filming, so once I get these guys in, I'm going to take them out of their little canister right here. Hopefully you can see that, and get them in, and I will talk a little bit about my experience working with kids with these in my ears. So here we are. These guys are in. They're a little bit different. They stick out a little bit more. I tend to have to move on my right side. I have to move them around a little bit to make it feel like it's more secure. But as far as background noise goes, these guys are a step up as compared to the foam earplugs. So I can hear the fountain a lot more clearly behind me. I can hear some birds. I can hear the general sound of peopling. And the occlusion effect is definitely a little bit less on these, but still pretty prominent. I have used these in a classroom, and the thing that gets hard is this is almost right, but not quite. And what I mean by that is that these guys block out, I would say, 2/3 of the noise of the foam earplugs. The problem is essentially that it still is pretty difficult for me to pick out sounds, directionally speaking. So I can generally hear that a car, for example, just went by me from right to left, but it's because I'm focused on it. And that's what I noticed with the kids as well, is that I had to focus a lot harder on what I was hearing with the kids in my classroom. And so I was able to still interact with them at a pretty decent level. However, it was a little bit more of an effort for me than usual to be paying attention. And it did help dampen the really intense noises that I experienced, such as kids screaming or yelling or, that sort of thing. And so it did help there, but it was still a little bit difficult to discern directionality or very specific things. And so that's where the Loop Engage 2 Plus come in, and we're going to talk about those next. I haven't had the chance to test them at work, but I have really high hopes for them in this specific situation, because I think it's going to be even a little bit less noise reduction, a little bit less of that occlusion effect, and a little more ability for me to focus on sounds that are closer to me. And that's the goal with these. So we're going to transfer to those, and I will tell you more in a moment. So another aspect of these that I wanted to touch on really quick before we move to the loops is travel. And when I'm traveling, I rely a lot on auditory cues such as traffic and people to orient myself, to know where I'm going, to feel safe and spatially and situationally aware. And that's something that's really, really important, because occasionally I do take my kids off site of my job. And so I need to be able to focus and be aware of my surroundings, be aware of the kids, but have the noises that make me really jumpy, that are at times too overloading for me. I need those to be knocked down. So my hope with the Loop Engage 2 Plus plugs is that essentially I'm going to get the best of both worlds. I'm going to get the lessened occlusion effect, so I'm not hearing my voice in my head quite as much, and I'm going to get more awareness of the background and specific sounds while taking out the heavy hitters such as intense traffic or loud kids, that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that happens, and we will see. Here we are with the Engage 2 Plus earplugs. And right away, I can tell you I have more directional awareness. Not maybe quite as much as I would like to feel 100% confident traveling right now, but I can pretty distinctly hear the fountain and the people around me. It's a little bit rough and muddy to pick out specific directional things, and that's really important. But I also got these about 2 hours ago, so I'm not used to them. I'm not used to operating in them. But definitely out of the 3 pairs, these block the least amount of sound, which sounds like a terrible thing for earplugs. But specifically with working with kids, I need to be aware of my surroundings, and that's something that I feel like I have with these. And so we talked about it in my video of why would a blind person get earplugs. I will put a link to that, as well as my first unboxing of the Loop Engage 2 Plus. What a mouthful. But the goal with these is hopefully that they kind of offer me the protection to not have the extreme loud sounds that are overwhelming and quite frankly make me very jumpy. But I still have the situational awareness and the ability to give directions, lead programming, and that sort of thing that I do for my job, while still being able to block out the sounds that are too much. And right now, just sitting here, out of the 3 pairs that I have, This is the pair that feels the most comfortable to me, that feels like I might be able to have that as a solution. And if you guys have any questions about auditory overload specifically, I'm going to try to touch a little bit on that before I leave here. And I'm actually going to be adventurous and attempt walking down about a block while wearing the Loop Engage 2 Plus, because I want to see if I feel comfortable or if it's overwhelming. So without further ado, I'm going to actually, you know what, let's just do one take and we'll go for it. So the thing with earplugs that's really hard as a general rule is finding a pair that bridges the gap between blocking out sounds, but also, again, allowing for situational and spatial awareness, which is really important when you can't see. When I would take classes on orientation mobility growing up, it was really important to be able to hear traffic, to be able to hear what's going on around me so that I can tell not only whether or not I'm safe, but whether or not I am where I think I am. And when you work with kids, it's also important to be able to do the same for other people. That's something that is definitely a challenge with earplugs, because by their nature, they are blocking out sound. Every earplug is going to block sound, that's its job. However, the question is, can you find something that bridges that gap? And I think, at least hopefully, this will be that product for me. And I don't know of any other blind people that have talked about this sort of thing. And so my goal is to do some more testing. This is not going to be the only video of its kind, at least that's the hope. Right now, I feel a little bit jumpy, not even because things are loud, but because I'm not quite as attuned auditorily to my surroundings as I usually am. But that also, again, comes with the fact that these are new and that I'm not used to them. So auditory overload as a concept is something that has been present for me for my entire life. I get very jumpy. So as an example, if I hear the sound of kids playing with balloons, I get very anxious because I'm sure a balloon is going to pop at some point. I don't know when, but it's going to happen, and I will jump every single time, but I'm aware that that sound could happen. When I was a kid, I hated going to parades because I hated the sirens that would come with them. And now that I live in a town where ambulances are very common, this time of year you start getting motorcycles cruising around, guys revving their engines, and I just get jumpy. But when you apply that to a classroom full of kids, I am now at just about every stage of my day, I am at risk for more auditory overload. When I realized that people in the autism community were using earplugs and noise-canceling headphones and that sort of technology to combat sensory overload, I kind of realized, why couldn't I potentially do the same as someone with a visual impairment, as long as I found something that still enabled me to feel relatively safe, oriented, and auditorily and spatially and situationally aware of what's going on around me. I did some walking with my fiance a couple days ago with the Vibes. Because I was with her and I trust her in terms of her guiding me around, I was comfortable while wearing those earplugs and walking with her, but I would not feel comfortable walking on my own. These, the Loops, I do feel a little bit more comfortable, but I feel like I have to be more attuned to what's going on. Hopefully that gives some insight. If you have any questions specifically about me with my auditory overload experience or any of the pairs of earplugs that I've talked about today, please let me know. I'm happy to try to help answer any questions I can in the comments. From there, we will continue this series in some form or fashion. Not sure what that's going to look like moving forward, but I wanted to get some field testing in. I will take the Loops to work with me over the next few days, and we'll kind of roll from there. But if you have any questions about anything, please let me know. We'll see you soon. Thanks for checking this one out.